Hello everybody, we're back here on Hobo's Hollow, kind of starting in the middle of what we've been doing out here in field number 8, giving it a plant. The last episode I started as a tribute to our friend Atomic, who's no longer here with us. And what is friendship? You know, you're going to ask the question and try to define it, and it's pretty hard to do. And even as I sit here trying to figure out what to say or to continue to say, at a certain level, there aren't enough words to express, you know, the meaning of what he was to me, but maybe to kind of continue the theme, if you'll indulge me, because this is for my friend. I thought I would share a little bit more about his, what I know of him anyways. There's a whole history inside of him that I don't know a whole lot about. So I didn't know him my whole life. It was just 7 years, kind of like I mentioned in the previous video. But over that time period, as you know, as you get acquainted with someone, you learn a lot about them, and still there's things that you'll never know. And, you know, I kind of mentioned the beginning that we had, and it was meeting at the FSU UK forum, where we kind of got acquainted with the Gelvin Valley map. And for a while, it was only periodic conversation, here and there, kind of scattered. He was doing his own thing, I was doing my own thing. Well, I guess we always do our own thing. But towards the end, and even up to literally the day before he passed, we were in almost daily communication. And so there was a whole lot of communication and sharing that we were able to do. We did it primarily over the Discord app. I think a lot of people are familiar with that. And so most of it was in text. There was occasionally a few times we would call and visit together via phone. But by and large, most of it was via good old-fashioned text and writing. And like I say, it was almost daily as we, you know, getting up to the end, and it had been that way for several years. It was just a part of my day. I had a friend who I would talk to all the time, and it could be in the middle of the working day, it could be you know, in the evening. It seemed like he kind of kept quirky hours, just like I do. Like this time of year, I'm getting up early in the morning for work purposes, putting in 12-hour days, and he tended, I think, to be a very early riser, but it also wasn't uncommon for him to be up late too. And it was mutual. I mean, back and forth, whatever we had, we'd share, and when the other guy was able to respond, you know, we would do that. But in the beginning, I guess kind of what I wanted to share was some of his YouTube journey, if you will. And like I say, he kind of got started with farming sim stuff, and probably much to the disappointment of some who may hear this, I don't think farming sim was what he really wanted to spend a lot of time on. He definitely did spend a whole bunch of time on it, and made all those videos that we enjoy, so much so that most people still don't even consider him Atomic 67. They remember him as Eustace Pharmer, kind of by his old name, because, well, I mean, they so enjoy the farming aspect of his content. But the very first video that he ever released, I looked this up here the other day, is called, it's 20 minutes long. It was on January 28th, 2016, so shortly before he and I made our acquaintance. and it was called How to Start a Successful Farm in Hard Mode Farm Sim 15. And I have so enjoyed his videos over the years. I don't know about anybody else, but I've gone back to listen to them over and over, multiple times. I've been through his entire collection at least twice. I think I've seen every single video he's ever done at least twice, and then there's some others that I've listened to multiple times, more than that, because I just found them enjoyable. And just before he passed, it just so happened I told him, I needed to listen to him again, so I was kind of going back through them and enjoying them all over again, which I think he found kind of amusing, that someone would do that. But I don't know, that was just me. I just enjoyed it. But I do remember him telling me, it's like, why do you watch the first one that I did? He said, those early ones were garbage, or however he put it. And, well, he may think so, but I know I don't. Particularly now, when what we have on there is all we're ever gonna be able to receive. So that was his first video. His final video, if I have it correct, at least on his Atomic 67 gamer channel, was about this particular farm. He had made an announcement for Hobo's Hollow, and this was November 4th, 2022. It's called an Atomic's Announcement, Hobo's Hollow. I think it was an announcement just kind of saying we were having some issues, technical issues or whatever, and weren't able to get the next episode out. I kind of explained this in the previous video a little bit, but the goal that we had was basically to do kind of one of these a week, and he would do one, and I would do one, and we would just pass it back and forth. Well, it never really quite got there. And as I think on it now, boy, this is so dark in here. Let me go out when it quits raining. But as I think on it now, I think he was doing it primarily for me. That I know you all would get to enjoy, especially his videos, and not so much mine, because I'm no good at it like he was. But I think it was a way for he and I to spend some time working on a project together, and I was really, really looking forward to it. And I think he ultimately ended up doing just, I think, what was it, one video? Aside from the announcement video, he kind of had an announcement throughout there of the partnership that we were getting into. And then he recorded his own episode. I think I did the very first, then he did one, and then I did two more, just kind of how it worked out. But the goal all along, I think, was to turn them each week, what he and I had talked about. But that was his final message. And I gotta say, other than these the interactions we had in Hobo's Hollow, and maybe some of you are lucky enough to do this. I think back in the day, at one time, he maybe had his own server. He was part of a couple different groups. I mentioned Mapper's Paradise last time. He was part of Three Dudes Gaming, where there was a couple other fellas that they formed their own forum and maybe had their own server for a while. So maybe some of you had the pleasure of literally playing multiplayer with him, farming stuff or what have you. I never did. This was the closest we ever got in terms of doing that. But all it was passing the save game file back and forth. So it really wasn't multiplayer, pretty low key, and the idea was, we could just each record an episode in turn and put something out to the world, if you will. So I think his last video involved this, but like I mentioned on the previous episode, he had another channel that he was starting, and just a handful of subscribers. There was maybe, he kind of joked and said that I and his wife and his daughters were probably about the only subscribers that ever listened. Well, I don't think that's true. He didn't make much fanfare about it because I think he wanted to observe how it would grow on its own. You know, especially after creating his first channel and going through the pain of building it up, if you will. You know, he and then he of course had helped me with mine, which I'll get into a little bit later. But over the course of his Atomic 67 channel, or what started as Eustace Pharmer, he uh, he did primarily. I mean, it ran from Farm Sim 15 through Farm Sim 22, obviously cleared to the Hobo's Hollow map here. But most of his videos, as we all know, was primarily in Farm Sim 15 and 17. I think he was a little disappointed with Farm Sim 19 when it came out, like many of us were. And so I can't even remember off the top of my head if he has any videos on 19. I'm sure he maybe has a couple. But by and large, most of his content was on 15 and 17. And what was his content? Most of us, if we know who he was, it was characters, stories, and they were just brilliant. They were just fun listening to. Occasionally in the air, he would throw in a map tour or some mod showcases, if you will. I think he called them. And in some of the great ironies of life, at least, I mean, it's an irony to me, and I know he couldn't understand it either. The amount of work that he would put into making a video that told a story was just over the top, a lot, astronomical. The amount of work that he would put into a mod showcase, on the other hand, I mean, there still was some work there, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't near as much as what he had to do when he was attempting to tell a story. And like I say, it's just ironic to me that the mod showcases got far more views than his storytelling ever did. And I don't know, I guess that just seems strange to me that, but maybe people being in a hurry with our time limited, maybe I'm just a simpleton and I just, I've often said I'm a sucker for a story, a good story. I grew up with a father who told me lots of stories, and I don't know, maybe it's just part of my genetic makeup. I really enjoyed his stories, and it surprises me, and I know it surprised him that more people preferred what seemed more generic, bare bones, more. I don't know. It just wasn't. All of his stuff is interesting, but let's just say the mod showcases wasn't as interesting as his storytelling. But when you look at the number of views on it, he there was no arguing which ones were more popular, or it tended to be some of those other ones. So I know a lot of us came to listen to him not for the mod showcases so much, although we appreciated those too, but it was for his storytelling, and he was fantastic at it, just fabulous. And we all probably remember a lot of the characters that he came up with, and I was just listening to some of them here in the past couple of weeks, and it's surreal to listen to someone's voice who has just passed away. And it's when you meet someone on the internet or through a digital medium like this, if you've never met them in real life or haven't ever talked to them, it almost feels surreal. You can wonder, it's like, well, is he really gone? Of course he is, but when you pull up his videos, his voice still sounds the same as it always did, vibrant and full of life. And I still have my direct message log that I had with him still sitting there on my Discord app, and I don't know, it's just strange. It's cut off in time, and maybe what I'm wrestling with is just not totally accepting it yet, that he's really gone. But we have to. But that's just the way it is. Whether him or anyone else, any of us, we live for even a short period of time, we know that there's people that are called out of life sooner than we are, and so it's something we got to deal with. But anyway, I digress. On his stories and characters, I want to at some point to go through his stories again and try to catalog all the characters. Not so much for anyone else, it's just I'm kind of interested because he had a boatload of them. And there were some that came back more often than others. And probably a couple names here that I'll say will be recognized by virtually anyone who listened to a lot of his content. One was good old Joey Machagaloo, and I think he was kind of a mafia type character, had that New England accent, eastern seaboard of the U.S., which, as I understand it, that's where Atomic grew up, and so he spent a fair amount of time. It just nails him. And another one that he had in a number of his stories was Victor Slabonovich. I think that's how you say that. And this is something I learned about Atomic, in talking to him. And for any of us that ever try to tell stories or come up with names, of course they're going to be based on people that we've run into in our life or composites of people maybe that we knew. And he was no different. He told me Victor was based on a coworker of his, I think of a place where he worked in the past. And he just, I personally took 2 years of Russian in college, and so I've been around some Russian people, and look at that, we're out of sea. Let me put this on. There we go. Alright, we're aiming for that tree. We're going to have to drive out of here and go get some more sauce. Because I can hardly see the ground. So, anyway, let's speed off over here. So Victor was one of those, like I say, I had taken Russian and been around Russian people. I took 2 years of it in college, and so I know the Russian accent when I hear it. I know a few words. I mean, shoot, for taking 2 years of it in college, I should know a lot more than I do. I just don't, not using it day by day. I was starting to get conversational, but then just didn't have room for it on my schedule. But here's the smarts that someone like Atomic had, and he picked it up on his own. He didn't go to school for it, but because he had a coworker and the two of them spent a lot of time together, he eventually learned the language, and as I understand it, was fairly fluent at it. You know how hard that is to do? I mean, for most of us of even reasonable intelligence, that isn't something you just do, especially when, most of us in this country were English speakers. And oop, let me go back over here. That's right, I put these out front here so I can come in. Alright, let me see if I can fill this up. Yeah. We'll get the seeds. Whoops. Sorry, Atomic. Nope, I gotta open a different part. There we go. Fill her up. But he was just so good at it, he just had the accent nailed. And occasionally he would slip it in a few Russian words, into his stories as Victor Slabonovich, for whatever he was doing. I think he had it in there where he and Joey were good friends, or pretended to be, and there was all sorts of escapades that he sent them on. And then there was just lots of characters that some of which came and went. And one of those, that I know I mentioned previously was Percy Wyatt. And I'm trying to remember how many times he showed up as a character. I don't know that it was all that many times, but it was important enough to Atomic that I know he created a whole separate channel for YouTube to start for inspirational sayings and what have you. So that was also one of the characters. But there were many, many, many of them. And like I say, I maybe should have had a catalog of them before ever starting up on... My goodness, that's hard to see. Before ever starting a video or trying to talk about... Hey, I think I guessed it, didn't I? We are down here. I'm just gonna... Yep, that looks like it's planted texture. I'm gonna get him moving. Turn that off. So dark. Rain, quit, please. So at some point, I want to go through there and catalog all those characters. And I know his wife and his daughters came in at some point. They had kind of their own character voices. You know, if you listen to his intros to his videos, he was constantly changing them and trying to tweak and improve. This is what I said in the other video. He was a master at his craft, you know, which was making YouTube videos. That wasn't the only thing he was talented at. But he just did a stellar job. So he was, I guess we would call it continuous improvement, if you will, changing the animation, voices, and many times his wife and his daughters, you know, would participate in those, and it just added to the whole of what he had. You know, he was meticulously organized. You know, I kind of looked at his channel and looked at the series that he did. There was a number of them. And I know the longest, you know, which I definitely appreciate because he and I both enjoy the same map. The longest happened to be on Gelvin Valley. That was in Farm Sim 15. 18 episodes. And I know there's many of the series that he had where we would have loved to have many more, but the style that he had, the storytelling and everything, it was a lot of work, I know, to crank out those episodes. But Elvin Valley was his longest running, and I think his favorite was Thornton Farms, made by Oxygen David, and I know he was also very fond of Coldborough Park Farm by Bullet Bill. And both he and I really appreciated the British maps in particular. And I think some of it is just the country charm and detail that a lot of the UK mappers, you know, put into their maps. And just the British countryside as it is. You know, I live in America. I live in an area of America where we have a little bit of that charm, I guess. You know, it isn't just square corners and square fields and everything like that here in Oregon where I live. But it sure is that way in lots of areas in the country, you know, in the Midwest, and it's mile by mile grid and a lot of squares. And I don't know about you, but I appreciate curves and different things to look at than just square corners all the time. And so when you look at the British maps, I know both he and I appreciated that about them. There wasn't hardly a square corner anywhere. And I'm sure if you talk to a British farmer trying to eke out a living like any other farmer, they probably appreciate flat fields and square corners. It's just more efficient. But they kind of have been handed the system that they have over the centuries, the way the land was laid out. But those were kind of his favorite maps, and I know he really appreciated and loved his subscribers. And this is something he taught me, you know, as he mentored me a little bit on making YouTube videos, which, you know, I still have his direct message log, and I go back to refer to it frequently. But he told me, he says, if people comment on your videos, you know, they're basically leaving you a gift, and to take time to answer those people. And, you know, I'd honestly never really thought about it before. I personally haven't left a lot of comments necessarily on someone else's video. I'm trying to do more of that now because, well, as I realize as I make my own videos, just how important it can be or how meaningful it is to the creator that's spent time doing it, to get a little feedback. And that wasn't the only thing either. He said there's always going to be trolls, not to let them, get you down with whatever they say. You can easily remove their comments and so forth. So there's a whole story that can be told about that, and I think I've commented on that in other videos. He was just wonderful, being willing to mentor me in a lot of ways. Yeah, we're still planting here. uh, but he also had interest in a lot of other games other than just Farming Simulator. And I think we all knew that. And really, and this is kind of a sad thing to me. When I asked him one time what his all-time favorite game was, it wasn't Farming Sim. It happened to be a game called No Man's Sky. And, I was looking at his channel here the other day to see how many videos he had made of No Man's Sky. And there are virtually none. I think I found one, maybe two, but it seems tragic to me that if this was his favorite game, that he only ever recorded a couple videos on it. Now, well, I say recorded, released. It's possible, and I think his computer probably is loaded with other videos that have never been released. And whether they ever do get released, if his wife is able to find them, if she has the ability or desire to send them out to the public, well, that all remains to be seen. But for his sake, I am hoping there are a couple No Man's Sky videos, many of them, that he's recorded. And I know over the course of our friendship, he sent me many pictures of things he was doing. And No Man's Sky, I really don't know all that much about it, but I think it's kind of a space travel type game, if you will, where you discover different worlds and you set up bases, and I maybe shouldn't say much more than that because I really don't know that much about it. But I know he really, really enjoyed it, and I think I left a comment. I was teasing him on one of his Farming Sim videos, and I just asked him in there in a comment, hey, do you by any chance have any videos on No Man's Sky? Haha. Well, or have you ever heard of or played the game? I forget how I asked it, and of course he sent back a similar teasing reply, and I think he said something like over the course of, it wasn't that long of a period of years, he had like 12,000 hours into it. So it was obviously something he enjoyed quite a lot. And like I say, I don't know how exactly he got involved in Farming Sim. It could be, I mean, there's a nostalgia piece. I won't say he hated the game. He did enjoy it enough to do all that he did. It just wasn't his favorite. And at some point, I know he kind of wanted to move his channel in a different direction. And I know there's a lot of guys that do that have a channel. They get an anchor game, if you will, and then they branch out to some other titles. And I don't know, I'm just not that imaginative. I'm probably going to stick with Farming Sim and record whatever I record, and if people listen to it, they do. If they don't, they don't, and that'll be that. But there was quite a number of other games that he actually did record some episodes on that I was seeing in his video log. So, but as I look at the clock here, I think I've worn out another whole half hour. So, you know what? I really enjoy talking about my friend. So, I think I'm going to stop the video here, and I'm going to continue it on another one. Hopefully I'm not boring anybody, but this was a special man, special friend to me, even though it was primarily digital. and I know he meant a lot to those of you that are listening and that knew him. So I'm going to say goodbye until next time. Thank you for watching and listening.